Hey, what is up guys? How are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So today we are talking a little bit more Nintendo Switch. Of course, it is what we love to do here. And I wanted to discuss a very common trend, something that we've seen happen pretty steadily ever since the Switch launched earlier this year. And it is third-party titles, multi-platform, that are releasing at a later date on the Switch compared to their console counterparts. So for me, the idea of this conversation started when these rumors started to surge about Dragon Ball FighterZ possibly coming to the Switch and releasing much later next year in 2018. And I do have to say that I had actually already been hearing some rumblings behind the scenes about the possibility of Dragon Ball FighterZ possibly coming to the Switch. And to be fair, it has still not been confirmed. No one officially knows if it is 100% going to happen, but only in the last week did huge rumors actually start to surface where somebody on Reddit, the most reliable source in the world, of course, made the claim that they've heard the rumor that it is in fact and will be coming. And because that rumor stated that if the game was going to come to the Switch, it was going to be coming close to a year later, it got me thinking about all of the other times that we've already seen that happening with the Nintendo Switch, the fact that maybe it will continue to happen for a time being, and whether or not this is a good or bad thing, and a trend that maybe needs to just straight up not be happening. I mean, you guys out there who are familiar with me have heard me mention on many occasions when I become happily surprised at the announcement of a multi-platform game coming to the Switch, and when that game is announced to come out day and date alongside of its console counterparts. And that hasn't happened a whole lot of times. LA Noire was a huge one. Sonic Forces, of course, also announced day and date. Recently, we had the reveal and announcement of Valkyria Chronicles 4, also coming to the Switch. And although we don't have the official release date for that game, nor do we know if the Switch version will release alongside of the counterparts, I think there's a good shot, because if anything, the game was announced across the board for all three consoles at the same time, so it's a very good sign. So when we look at other games that have already released or are about to release for the Nintendo Switch, we will still see that trend of titles that have already released on the other consoles and we're still waiting on that Switch version. Some good examples are like the Resident Evil Revelations collection that's coming out in a few weeks, released about a month or two ago on the PS4 and Xbox One. There are the unique cases of games like Skyrim or Doom, which of course are late ports to the Switch. However, those games released before the Switch even also released. But then you get other stuff like Rime, like Yooka-Laylee, like Wolfenstein 2 we know to expect sometime, hopefully early in 2018. Possibility it gets delayed, but to be fair, we don't even have the official release date. We just know that it is 2018, and the other versions have already launched a few weeks ago. And then there's even, of course, Dragon Ball Z Xenoverse 2, another Dragon Ball game from Bandai, the same company responsible for Dragon Ball FighterZ. So we have a couple of examples, and there's myriad other ones, even some indie games and whatnot, where we've seen them release later on the Nintendo Switch. And I have to say that I think we're getting to the point where this probably doesn't need to and shouldn't be happening any longer. I do think after a time, it could become potentially dangerous for these versions of Switch games, and for them to suddenly not sell so well, and then we get into the weird Nintendo thing that we've seen happen in the past, most specifically with the Wii U, where a delayed or an underperforming port of a third-party multi-platform game ends up not doing well and being successful on the Nintendo console at that time, and so it sends this weird, misguided message perhaps to the rest of the industry or developers that, hey, it's not worth making our games available on the Nintendo console because they're obviously not doing well, people aren't interested in them. And it doesn't really send an accurate message, because it's obvious that, hey, if they had a better chance at survival, a better shot at getting into people's homes at a relevant time, such as when it launched for the competing consoles, maybe that wouldn't be the case and more people would be picking up that Nintendo version. And so I'm someone who does believe that we are going to see stronger third-party support continue for now. And that is a good thing, and luckily it means we're not yet seeing the effects of late Switch ports possibly not selling or performing well. In fact, we're probably even seeing some of them sell considerably better than their counterparts. And with these future games like Wolfenstein, we might even see more of that. So we are in that gray area where it's even tough to say if it is actually a negative thing. My biggest fear is that after time, it would start to become a negative thing if the situation doesn't level out. I mean, by year 2 or 3, there's really no reason to think that ports of multi-platform games coming to Switch would be releasing so much later than their console counterparts. I mean, it just really doesn't make sense. At some point, we know the dev kits are out there. We know that these companies have had time to work on a port for the Switch of whatever game they're making, and they should be able to hopefully get it out on time right alongside these other versions. And for example, like I've said many times, I'm someone who believes that next year's Call of Duty, which I believe is Treyarch's game, will very likely come to the Switch. I mean, I think we're at 70 to 85% possibility that that game is going to be coming to the Switch. And that is something where I think it could potentially be by that long into the Switch's life, and with the game as huge as that, it probably wouldn't be the best thing to have that game release at least significantly later on the Switch, for example. Like, you know, that game's probably going to come out in the first week of November in 2018. Now, if by the end of November or maybe the first week of December the Switch version came out, okay, I'd be willing to give like a month or a couple of weeks leeway and feel like that's probably not a big deal and doesn't have the chance at negatively affecting the Switch version. But if we get into a similar situation maybe with Wolfenstein, where it comes out significantly later, many, many months later, into the next calendar year later, again, it's tough to predict. It could go either way, but I think we just start to tread into that territory where maybe we would start to see some of these things be negatively impacted, and that makes me fear for the possible Wii U repetition scenario, where we see what happened with the Wii U third-party games start to happen again with the Nintendo Switch. Now, bear in mind, and let me just bring this down in case anyone's freaking out about how crazy all of this sounds. I am totally acknowledging that there is a good possibility that simply because the Switch is so fantastic and so unique and so many people want to play a lot of these third-party games on the Switch, that maybe for a longer period of time than I'm thinking, gamers might be willing to wait for their multi-platform games. That might be the case. I plan on being one of those people that might be willing to do it throughout the whole life of the Switch. But there is also the real possibility that people start to get fatigued with that idea and people start to not want to wait so long to get their games, even on the Switch. Tough to say, because at that point, the Switch will have sold so many units that there might be a wider variety of gamers out there with the Switch who are not like a lot of us earlier adopters and might not have the patience we have to wait, you know, a year for a Yooka-Laylee or a Bloodstained or a Wolfenstein 2 or a Call of Duty or whatever the case is. At some point, the industry needs to be able to catch up. And, you know, I started this video with a couple of examples of really high-profile games that are starting to release day and date for the Switch. I believe, again, there is a huge chance that Valkyria Chronicles will also be one of those games coming up in the near future. So, you know, we're just going to have to wait and see where it goes, but I think it's an interesting idea and an interesting concept to point out. Do we need to see this problem get rectified? Do we need to see third parties start releasing their multi-platform games on the Switch day and date across the board? Or does it not matter? Maybe some of you guys think, hey, you know what? The Switch is so unique and so cool and people love the portable gaming so much that no matter what game it is, no matter how long the Switch is out, people will be willing to wait for that Switch version, and so it won't possibly negatively impact sales. It could go either way. I just thought it would be fun to explore both angles to come at this concept from. So tell me what you guys think, of course, below on this idea, and that is going to be it for me today. So thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.